It's week 2 in the UFL. It's in the books, and this is the Lippman on the UFL. Stay tuned.
Just bring it, bitch!
Having a little fun there. So, I am Jeff Lippman, and my co-host is
Jake Lippman.
All right, there we go. So today is the day after. It's Happy Eclipse Day to everybody.
Yes.
Hope you did not look into the corona, into the sun. I mean, you shouldn't look into the sun directly anyway, but apparently this will cause you some ill-shaped scarring as opposed to regular scarring. So hopefully you saw the eclipse, and hopefully you don't think it portends doom and catastrophe, and it will turn you into a frog-loving reptilian. But if you do, check out my show Garden of Doom, because it's definitely for you. Otherwise, we had a pretty interesting week in football. I think the teams showed us what they were mostly, and I think that reflects in the better success that we both had in our predictions this week over week 1, where we were just sort of guessing. Now, you probably have a question for me.
I do, because I'm wearing this lovely St. Louis Battlehawks sweatshirt that they brought out 40,000 people, almost sold out their stadium. But what are you wearing?
I'm wearing a Memphis Showboats t-shirt, not because I'm all in on the Memphis Showboats, because I think that the last week I described the Memphis Showboats something to the extent of just not bad enough to win, or something to that effect. And I stand by that. They're very mid, and I would actually say they're a little bit sub-mid. But
that was very modern of you to use the term mid.
Yes, well, MJF from AEW Wrestling used it, and of course, if it comes from wrestling, that's how things from pop culture creep onto me.
Of course.
And I'm wearing this because I want to acknowledge to the folks that I have been mid, and I want to acknowledge a couple of mistakes I have made in my journey in midhood up until betterhood. So I made 2 gigantic mistakes. One, I listened back to shows, and I have repeatedly said that this is an 8-game season. It is not. It is a 10-game season till the playoffs. So while each loss still is certainly more impactful than a 17 or 18 game NFL season would be, it's not necessarily catastrophic. And of course, you know, we knew all along that Arlington had only gone 4-6 last year, and they won their respective championship. So I wanted to correct that for the record. I don't know why I had a block. I think it's just because there's 8 teams in there, and I, was thinking, I couldn't possibly wrap my head around how they play each other twice and then just 2 randomizers. The other thing is that, and I don't know that this was necessarily a tragic mistake on our fault beforehand or my fault beforehand, but after watching week 1, should have caught it. But I'm not really sure it happened. But apparently when you punt the ball and it is down inside the 25, the team does start offense at the spot of the down, not at the 25. So there is a reason why you'd have a place kicker or a good punter. So wanted to correct that too. Obviously, we have been very transparent that we are learning this league as we go, as a lot of you are, and hopefully that's been a fun thing for all of you. But I wanted to acknowledge those 2 things in case people say, why am I listening to a podcast from this guy who doesn't know anything? Well, I know I made a couple mistakes. I think you put in there an excellent point about, we had 4 games this week. St. Louis killed it with attendance. Killed it. Over 40,000. Fantastic. Living up to all the hope and actually exceeding all the hope for what they did. Washington, D.C. had like 15,000 people as well. Not bad.
Stand up, D.C.
Yeah. The other 2 games, I would say sub-mid. They're not so happy. I've not seen the TV ratings this week for yesterday and Saturday yet. They seem to be a little bit delayed. But I also made another error last week in reviewing the ratings, and that is I gave the wrong range. The Michigan St. Louis game on Fox, the night game, actually went as high as 1.34. Well, that was the aggregate, 1.349, but it actually exceeded that in certain parts of the game. The low was 700,000. I think I said 800,000, which was the late ESPN game. So with those corrections and omissions out of the way, why don't you start us in the news and notes that are on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I did see that they formalized their partnership with the U.S. Army. I also saw those exact same ratings that you saw. I do think that it's a little underwhelming. I think people expected bigger numbers, but we have to temper expectations. This is a new league. There's March Madness. The WNBA tournament, or the Women's March Madness tournament's been getting a lot of traction, and they're competing on Saturdays with boxing, MMA, all the basketball, baseball opening weekend, and there's a lot going on in sports. So I would hope that these numbers grow. I think we saw a lot of much higher scoring games this week than we saw the week one. I think we saw a little bit more offensive fortification where teams were just playing a little bit more in unison. And I think overall, I think the league is trending upwards. I think we did see some porous attendance in the other two games that you didn't mention. I think both of those games were sitting around 8,000 fans, and both of those games were played in stadiums that hold about 65,000 fans. So there is a long way to go, and I've seen a lot of stuff online about how they're only filling one side of the stadium, which makes sense, for staffing purposes and for all the things behind the scenes. But it would be really nice to see the full lower bowl, being supported. So if you're watching this means you're a super fan, and let's show up to these games if you can. Let's make sure you're tuning in on TV. Get in on social media so that way the league knows that you're watching, because this is a league that needs to impress in order to continue. And I think that if you want to keep a team in your city, you got to show up and prove that you want that team, just like St. Louis did. I mean, there's a reason why they're getting the championship game this year. So that's kind of my synopsis of everything. I think there was still a lot of, sloppy play, and we can talk about the specifics when we get to each game. But I think week 2 was a very successful week. I think it was a fun week of football. Unfortunately, I didn't watch the games live, but watching them back, there was a lot of excitement. I was super impressed with the Battlehawks and their fans and how loud that stadium was. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else is to come. So I don't know if you want to build on that or if we should just get straight into the games.
I'll build on it a bit. I mean, we can talk about the games obviously in each team, but I agree that the teams did show us what they were, and there were some players who showed out. If I am a running back who didn't try out for this league, and I think that I am NFL quality, but I've only been on scout teams or in practice squads, or kept getting cut down before the final 60 or whatever, or didn't get drafted because I went to a smaller school or what, I would be lining up at least 7 of 8 of these teams, because the running game was hard to find. We had one significant injury, which in my humble opinion, this is going to sound terrible, is a lucky break for that team. And it's going to fit into some of our preseason, prognostications as things that we saw. But yeah, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and you say it in a much more positive way than I do. But this is a new league, and they seem to be committed. They seem to be committed to a plan of expansion. But you could have said that about the XFL and the USFL previously, and
all the leagues before it that failed. The AAF, all of them. I won't even bother with naming them.
Yeah, a lot of Army talk. That's a good thing. That's money and all that good stuff. But Daryl Moose Johnson, the president of football operations, or vice president of football, whatever his title is, expressed a little bit of dismay at the turnout. He didn't really say much about the TV ratings. I guess that they're basically satisfied, and these do seem to be better than last year for both of the leagues when they were sort of competing with each other. So that's a good thing that there is some net growth, though. Obviously they were overlapping fans because it's not like they doubled, but they are up from last year. Hopefully that continues, and hopefully they'll build upon each other. But Darren Moose Johnson basically was like, hey, if you want your team to stay here, if you want us to expand, you need to come out and support your teams. I don't think they're expecting every team to be like St. Louis. They would love it, but I do think that they're expecting 15, 20,000 people in the game so that they can have both of the lower bowls, basically filled or mostly populated. And that's going to help your TV audience too, because if you're watching football and there's not a whole lot of people there, it doesn't feel like you're watching football. It feels like maybe you're watching Division 3 or Division 2 at a not very good school. I mean, so it's a bad optic, and this is a TV product after all. And I cannot stand the arguments I get. I hear this with wrestling all the time. Nobody watches TV anymore. They're cutting the cord. Okay, that's wonderful. But the money comes from TV, and TV money comes from viewers because the TV money comes from advertisers who want to get to viewers who are watching it live and can't fast forward through it. They're not as excited about DVRs or whatever. And yes, the DVRs have made it more difficult to skip everything, and they stop in places, and they've got it more clever, but you can still skip and DVR commercials. But if that's not what you like and that's not what you're going to watch, don't be confused when the league is no longer around or it's no longer on a major market and maybe just your local access channel or whatnot, which is not there. But let's be positive. Let's hope that.
Yeah. And I don't want to cut you off, but I think there's nothing like watching a live sports event. I think you can say that for something like, and even professional wrestling, like that's not my jam, but like I didn't watch a second of WrestleMania, and all I had to do was go to Twitter and I'm cued in on everything. It's the same thing with football and baseball and everything. If you're cued into your team, all you have to do is go on social media and it all gets spoiled. You don't have that option unless if you're going to go completely in the dark to go and watch it on DVR and skip the commercials. You're going to watch it live. So I think that it's kind of a moot argument in this topic of sports with people not wanting to watch it live. You have to watch it live. Otherwise, why watch it at all?
Yeah, especially for real sports. But yeah, wrestling's a great example. But there's differences. But this is not a wrestling show. But the funny thing is, if those of you who are increasingly wondering which one of us is the father and which one is the son, or maybe if we had the Freaky Friday thing happen, I watched every single second of WrestleMania, and I watched NXT Stand and Deliver. So I also did not watch all of the games live. I did watch some of the games live. I was able to watch the Sunday games live, and I was able to watch part of one of the Saturday games live. But the funny thing is because I couldn't watch it all live, I watched it on the DVR. And if I wasn't able to watch it live, I would have missed the end of that San Antonio game, which, helped with picks. And it's crazy. So let's just get into it. So the first game before a crowd of 8,791 was San Antonio at Memphis Showboats. Now, I said last week I'm all in on the Brahmas. A lot of this game, I had my doubts. I'm still sticking with them, though I have more doubts than I do. I'd say through all these games, commentary, everyone, they are really pushing the betting. It's like this league seems to be more dependent on gambling than anything else.
Well, and you know what? That's kind of how people are getting into sports now, especially these lesser-known leagues. If you're able to gamble on them, you have a vested interest. You don't need to be from that city or pick a team. You're picking a team week to week. It's like it's fantasy football, but its own world. So I get why they're pushing it. I mean, I don't know. I actually tend to like it because I feel like it makes, if you're not rooting for a team, it makes you kind of, you naturally want to root for the underdog. So it gets you a little bit more vested. But I see what you're saying. I mean, they really are pushing on it. And that, I mean, San Antonio was a favorite entering the game, and they were even a favorite while they were losing for a little while. And then they became a huge underdog.
Yeah, I want to show my stodgy underside. I mean, but I have to show a little bit. I am, people can do what they want to do, but gambling when I was a youth was basically in Las Vegas and Atlantic City, and yeah, it was in Reno and some other places like that. And now it's everywhere. The Indian reservations now, First Nations, Native Americans, they said, well, we're not covered by your law, so we can have casinos, and now casinos, gambling is everywhere. They were offshore on the internet, and it's not special anymore. And governments actually sponsor from everything from scratch offs and lotto and Powerball, and I get very uncomfortable when governments are sponsoring lotteries, which are usually just taking money from people who can't afford to spend it. I don't feel as bad when it's private industry doing. That's the industry they've chosen, but I am uncomfortable with the way it's proliferated everywhere. That said, and my little stodgyisms out of the way, let's forget about that. So this game opened up with special teams actually dominated a lot more in this week than it did in prior weeks. Game opened up with a big kickoff return. We had a competent first drive for a touchdown by Memphis. And there were also a couple of San Antonio defensive penalties, which annoyed the heck out of me. San Antonio seemed to be very undisciplined. I don't know if they were all in on themselves because they heard me and got all in and my excitement, but they were jumpy and touchy. But I'd say league wide, there's a lot of penalties, especially on defense. There's and less so on offense, but I think it's for all the wrong reasons. I think it might be because the offense aren't that competent, so they don't even have time to, have penalties when they're, their plays are being blown up in 5 or 6 seconds. But there were a few offensive penalties also over the course of the weekend.
And I think it's funny you mention it because we're 2 weeks in and we've seen 2 suspensions. We've seen a right tackle spit on a defensive guy in week 1, and then we saw a defensive guy punch a guy in the chest, and rightfully so. He was getting held way after the play, but he punches his arm, can't get the big offensive lineman off him, so he punches him in the chest. I mean, you just can't be doing that type of stuff.
No, and by the way, that the defensive player for DC was released.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, they released him. So everyone's hoping he gets the stuff together. Maybe, I guess they're hoping that. Anyway, there was Cookus, the quarterback, great name, showed us some legs for the extra point. Extra points were also so sort of another overarching thing I noticed is like when these rules came in to have these different extra point options, I think that the goal was so that you'd have more scoring options, that math would play more of a role in it, and that it would be more exciting, that the teams would be looking for larger leads or to cut into, when they're behind, for mathematical purposes and whatever. And I still see the league struggling with it. But the main thing I see them struggling with is I don't think the goal was to get fewer extra points, period. And we're seeing a lot of not getting even the ones, which is so I don't think that was the goal, but maybe.
No, and can I butt in here real quick too before you go back on with the game? I mean, you mentioned the kickoff returns at the very beginning. I think for this league, the kickoff returns being different is actually very beneficial. I think to get the scoring, to get the offense we need, these exciting kick returns are allowing for the field position to make that a little bit easier to provide opportunities. And because of a little bit of offensive incompetence, we're seeing these kickers actually. I'm surprised with how many field goals we're seeing. A ton of field goals, and we'll talk about Jake Bates later, but shout out Jake Bates. That guy probably already knows what NFL team he's going to at the end of the season. But focusing in on this game and the extra points and the whatever you want to call it, the 1, 2, and 3 point conversions, I mean, Memphis has a guy in John DeFilippo as their offensive coordinator and head coach. He's a guy who specialized in the NFL in his offenses in short yardage. And I don't want to say it's just these conversions because it's also their 3rd and shorts and their 4th and shorts. They're just not doing well in short yardage, Memphis as a whole. But, I mean, this is a guy that did the Philly special. I mean, where's his creativity and where's his effectiveness? I mean, I understand going for the 1 point. It's very much a easier play to only go 2 yards, but then they're running stupid pass plays, which your offensive lines collectively across the league aren't blocking well. And I get it. It's hard for you to win up front and run the ball, but you're 2 yards out. So then if your problem is not getting the pressure up front and you want to throw it, why are you not going to the 5 and the 10 yard for the 2 and 3 point plays where you can use that creativity? And when they're going for the 2 and 3 point plays, I'm still just not seeing play creativity. And maybe it's credit to the defenses, but specifically with Coach DeFilippo, I anticipated him really, really being good in this aspect specifically. And Memphis has been failing with that.
Yeah. If you are in a fantasy football league for the UFL, I think your first round picks probably are field goal kickers. Up till now, I don't even know who your next would be. There's a couple receivers, and I guess depending on how things are scored, quarterback is always worth a lot. Anyway, so the ball goes back to San Antonio. A really good kickoff return by our guy McFarland. He runs it all the way to the 43. but the run games continue to struggle for both teams. I mean, neither one of them can get anything going on. The defenses are both solid. I mean, I have to say, league-wise, the defenses are solid, but I'm still not sure if the defenses are solid or the offenses are just so bad. I think some of the defenses are good no matter what, but some of the offenses really just are their bad. And so many penalties. I can't stress on, and mostly on San Antonio, and often on third downs. Their own, the other team has third and long, and giving away. It was 13-0 Memphis at halftime. So Memphis is at that point. Filippo was probably feeling pretty good about himself. He's like, I don't need to get creative. I can just Buddy Ryan this. I can just Bill Parcell this game and run and keep kicking field goals. The offensive highlight for San Antonio at this point was a guy named Stevenson. So I'm sure you took note of
Marquez Stevenson. Yeah. And he had a good week one, and he really, really stepped it up this week.
Yeah, you're our expert color guy on who the players. So tell us a little bit about Marquez Stevenson.
Look, I mean, Marquez Stevenson is a guy who he had a lot of success in college. He never really stuck around in the NFL. But one thing I love about Marquez Stevenson is he's got a little bit of physicality to him, but he's naturally a speed guy. And you've been seeing him make good catches with his hands. And then he's got these bursts of athleticism where he's just making plays, and he has those sure hands. And I think you've been really seeing him step up. I feel like coming into the season, Jontre Kirkland was kind of expected to be the guy. And he still made some good plays, but this week, Jontre Kirkland was a little bit more silent. And Anthony McFarland was a little bit more silent this week as well. And I think when you look at their team, I mean, they're going to be very reliant on those receivers and the speed that McFarland has. They've got a power guy in John Lovett, and they've got Cody Latimer, who made a couple big plays down the stretch for them. But they're going to be very reliant on finding their guy for Chase Garbers.
Latimer was surprisingly absent most of the game, and
until the very end.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the play callings. Again, I don't know if it's credit the defense, but this was just a weird. Memphis is a weird team. They have parts, and the only thing I can assume is that their offensive line isn't very good, or that Cookus isn't very good. I mean, at some point he got injured, and I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. But he only missed one play, and then I just wrote down, this guy's just a game manager, and that's what he is, And more Trent Dilfer than I don't know, Dan Marino.
And Dilfer won a Super Bowl. And I'd like to hone in on Memphis's offense a little bit while we're talking about Cook. He looked good in the first half. I mean, he was sharp. He was making his reads. I think he threw a pick early on, but he recovered from that. He used his legs a little bit, not necessarily to run down the field, but to extend plays. But their running game, I mean, they were saying in between weeks that Trey Williams, their third running back, was going to get some touches, and I think he got a big goose egg. I don't even think he saw the field. And you got a guy in Titus Swen who I haven't seen him do anything this year, and Darius Victor, I thought we actually saw marginal improvement from him this week, but they need to get that run game because Case Cookus can't do it all on his own. If you're going to be a game manager, you need that run game, and you see it down the stretch as they were throwing the ball a lot in the first half, and it was working. And then they tried to kill the clock, and they couldn't get anywhere. And one thing I noticed across the whole league this week is running games typically kind of feed into the passing game, and the passing game kind of balances off the running game in the NFL. But in the UFL, it's kind of the reverse. I mean, you need to open up your passing game to get your running game going. And I just think they mismanaged the way that they were play calling. I mean, they became one-dimensional in the second half, just clearly trying to chew clock. And when you have a Wade Phillips defense against you, you know that they're going to stuff the box and be ready for the run. Your best chance is by going over the top. So I was very curious with that. I do think they have a good tight end core. I think Sage Surratt and Wes Saxton, I think both of them had some really good sure-handed catches throughout the game, and they were kind of an extra security blanket on top of those three receivers we already mentioned. But they need that running game to get started.
They sure do. And listen, the strategy would have worked unless it wasn't for those meddling kids. I mean, so at some point this game was like 18-9 or 8, something like it was. I think it was 18 it was 18-8. So San Antonio they had one really nice play, a touchdown pass, and then they converted the 2 points.
And I think it was 19-8 because it was 19-16. Not to spoil what you're about to say next, but.
Right, and then that was exciting. But then there was another costly San Antonio penalty in the fourth quarter, and Memphis then had an interception after a San Antonio stop, and then you figured that the game was over. Well, at the end, credit to San Antonio. I mean, I wasn't thrilled with them getting behind like this over such a mediocre Memphis team, but they never gave up. And believe me, we're not talking about San Antonio that much because they were lower than mediocre most of the time. Again, solid defense, offense. I don't know. There was like, I was trying to figure out what's the opposite of solid, but whenever you're talking about matter, it's anti-matter. So I came up with gaseous, and gaseous actually is a pretty good description for the offenses across the board. But this was liquid is too complimentary, but especially for San Antonio this week. But they got it together in the last 2 minutes. So they had
boy, did they.
And in the final 43 seconds, they scored 11 points. And they ended up winning 20-19. So they're 2-0. They got it done. So I'm still all in the Brahmas. I'm not as convinced as I was before, but teams need these kinds of wins, despite whether they should have been in this position or not. But they should get off their high horse and work on some of the fundamentals on offense. But they won the game. Then they took advantage of the scoring system, so they did what they were supposed to. So the coaching worked, and being aggressive in those extra points and converting them really played a positive factor for them. Better late than never.
Absolutely, and I think again back to Coach Phillips. He's the type of coach that he's going to be able to reflect on this game and convey his message to the team accordingly. And I think I don't know. I was always high on the Brahmas before you were. Not to throw that in your face. But I don't know. I'm not fully convinced on Chase Garbers. I never really was. I kind of like the pieces around him more than him himself. I think their defense, despite lacking the bigger names, I think they really do well up front. And I like the way that Darius Phillips was playing at corner. He was playing very aggressive and giving some of the Showboats receivers some problems. But I would say that the hype train has slowed down on San Antonio, despite how impressive that comeback win was. And I don't know. I mean, I really want to be nice when I'm talking about Memphis, but they kind of suck.
Yeah, they do.
In the most respectful way possible, they kind of suck. And they were gifted their first win. And you can go back to the 4th and 12 conversion where I'm not convinced that he got 12 yards. They said it was forward progress, but I saw him catch it at the first down and clearly take it back behind the first down marker and then fight for it. And maybe he got it, maybe he didn't, but they didn't even show us that cool True Vision technology that they have. I mean, they didn't even review it. They just gave them the first down and kept moving on. So I don't want to say that there's any referee misconduct, but maybe a little bit of inadequacy. I don't know if that's the proper word, but I don't know. The hype train on the Brahmas slowed down. I still am a big fan of them. And the Showboats, they are not showboating to anybody.
Yeah,
I do think that they can
keep
games close. Yeah, I mean, they've been slow. But I do think that they can compete. I do like Case Cookus.
Everyone can compete. That's the thing. Everyone can compete in this league. But I agree with every single thing you said. And I need to confess to another thing that was sort of mid. So last week, for those of you who were watching live, you saw that our stream went out at some point. It was a StreamYard thing. We were able to get back on, and we even brought the guest back on, and we continued. So if you were trying to watch episode 4, you had to watch it in 2 segments. And some of you did watch both. Strangely enough, some of you only watched one or the other. But it never made it to the audio. And we actually get a decent amount of people who listen to the audio, even though it's hidden there on the Garden of Doom feed along with Garden Views. I mean, nothing to write home about, but it's not like nobody's listening.
And thank you for listening. We appreciate it.
We do. And for those of you who do listen on audio and were wondering what's up next week or this week, or you're watching and you still like to listen because you want to hear it a second time or you want to speed it up, I prefer listening to myself at speed and a half or sometimes 2 times speed. This one, unless we have another similar technical difficulty, knock on something that might be woodish, that won't happen and it will be back. It's not like I discontinued the audio. It's just I don't know how. I'm not tech savvy enough to upload 2 things and then figure out how to splice them together. I'm sure that the average 12-year-old can do it, but I can't. And all I can say about that is
I don't
right.
know how you did that though.
Yeah, no, I work magic that way. So our next game is Arlington, the Renegades, the much ballyhooed Arlington Renegades versus St. Louis in the Battle Dome with that crowd of 40,317 players.
And the
So
Battlehawks, those fans are ready to go to war.
they sure are. And in this game, probably the most interesting thing that I saw early on was that there's a formation called chaos, which I don't think is legal in the NFL. And you have your tackles lined up as wide receivers. So you have two tackles on each side, like basically guarding a wide receiver, which is an interesting play. But I mean, I'm sure the defenses scope it out because they know that you're going to throw to one side or the other, and you just have to get behind those tackles. I mean, the goal is to have your giant tackles blocking your cornerback and your safety and your wide receiver. But I mean, the defenses scope it out, and the tackles are either too slow or not athletic enough or whatever it is, and it went for a loss. So despite it looking like it could be exciting, maybe one day it will be, but I would stay away from chaos again. I would adhere to Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park's chaos theory. Nothing good comes from that.
And it is legal in the NFL, just seldom used for all the reasons you just explained.
Interesting. Okay. I did not know that.
We've seen it every once in a while with the Ravens, so they like to mix it in there.
So this was a game of strange things. So Arlington, first of all, was trying to have a running game. They would definitely calm in offense. They definitely seem like a professional team. They have a solid defense. Lindsey Scott is their explosive second-headed quarterback. He did have a running touchdown. They did have a 2-point trick play conversion where they did sort of like a flea flicker, then a pass to the corner.
On an awful throw.
It floated like a duck, but it got there, and the defense wasn't anywhere around the guy, so it worked.
Not to mention his other throw he had in the game where it just didn't even come close to being a completed pass, but I digress.
On the other side of the ball, St. Louis, so their kicker tried to go for a field goal. The timeout was called, so he was iced, and he missed the field goal. And so they tried again, and he missed the second time. St. Louis also, solid defense. All the teams have solid defenses as far as I can tell. Some of them look like they would be impressive defenses, but it's still really hard for me to tell that. The running back, Mateo Durant, had some decent runs for St. Louis. He looks like he's an okay running back. Like
much more explosive than Gallman.
Yeah,
and I like Wayne
Gallman, who was an NFL player, so it's a little bit surprising. But Durant, I mean, he was the best running back this game, and up until this moment was the best of this weekend. Their standout receiver is obviously Marcel Aitman. He's a star.
Absolutely.
AJ McCarron had a much better game than he had game one. I still wouldn't say that I don't know if I'm him and I look into my heart and soul in the mirror, I'm like, maybe I should have stayed with Cincinnati as their third string quarterback. I'm not sure if I'm doing myself any favors here, but he looked better. Durant had a touchdown on the pitch. They missed a 2-point conversion. And at this point, I'm asking myself, why? Why are you going for a 2-point conversion? Just take the one. I mean, it's not like you were behind. It's not like it was going to create any advantage. It's not like Arlington was moving the ball with any success. They had a field goal. So,
but I think that goes back to what I was saying before. If you're going to throw the ball, why go for one? You may as well give yourself that 3 yards of cushion so you can actually have some room to work. So I actually don't mind that call.
I was questioning it at the time, and since it didn't work out, I'm okay with it. But it didn't end up haunting them. I mean, obviously there are spoilers here, but the game's already occurred. So if you're getting all of your UFL news from us, thank you for listening to a UFL stream and podcast instead of actually watching the games or checking out ESPN or looking in box scores or anything else to find out what the information is.
Or watching the 15-minute extended highlight versions that the UFL posts, which are extremely helpful and entertaining.
Oh, I didn't even know they did such a thing. But terrific, good news there. But there are spoilers in a review show a day after. So
this is a recap.
It's a recap. So this is 11-14 at the half. Again, some of those strange UFL scores, 11 being weird, 14 not being in the second half, Arlington's offense opened up a little bit. They had a touchdown and a missed extra point, of course. And then St. Louis lost a coach's challenge, and they lost a timeout and no more challenges in the game. And it was about a personal interference call, a pass interference call, which is a little bit of a strange thing to do a coach's challenge on, because those rarely, unless they're blatant, rarely get on there. But it led to a touchdown for the other team. But again, St. Louis ended up winning the game. So I don't know that anyone's going to criticize it, but there were some coaching choices by St. Louis's. Is it Beck? Is he their coach?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I was even his pregame speech, like, at the end of the show, he goes, "I love you guys," which is, I mean, I guess it's nice, but it's not very rah. Listen, I wasn't the backup quarterback on my high school football team like you were. So is "I love you guys" something that the coach normally says?
I mean, we didn't win, so we didn't hear that very often.
Well, they hadn't won yet either. So
no, I will say it does build that camaraderie, that family environment, and you do want to feel like you're going to war with your brothers. And so I wouldn't. It might be a little cringy, it might be a little weird, and that's part of the thing with the whole mic'd up, where I think they need to pick and choose their moments of when they're utilizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I saw a couple times where you had guys, yes, that was such a good play. Like, not a big fan of all that. But yeah, it depends on the moment, I would say.
I hear playing times like "Family on 3," but not "I love you." Anyway, but all right.
And he has the Gradkowski bros on his staff. You can't forget them. It's all a family there.
Well, they should love each other. I mean, they're brothers after all. All right. So we had so there was a touchdown from what is the quarterback's name for St. Louis? Is it
AJ McCarron?
McCarron. Duh, I just said it. Okay, great.
Two-time national champion winner.
That's right. The touchdown, 1-point conversion. Marcel Aikman was the man that I want to say Aikman because of Troy Aikman. Then you had a missed field goal by Arlington. So at this point, after a successful touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 1 extra point conversion, 1 missed, it was 24-24. And then there was a big run by Durant, 41 yards, probably the best run I've seen in the UFL period. And they got to the 4-yard line. They called the timeout at 2 seconds, very NFL traditional play calling here. Field goal win. St. Louis ekes out the win at home, 27-24 against Arlington with Luis Perez. Very disappointing for them as defending champions. Yes, everyone knows they went 4-6 last year and still won, but that was a different league. Arlington did almost nothing to impress me this game, except when I say Memphis was below competent, I would say Arlington is competent.
I would really disagree. I mean, I'm wearing the Battlehawks shirt, and if you watched last week, I kind of was down on AJ McCarron, and I'm still not really changing my sentiment. I don't. There's something about his vibe that I'm just not liking. It doesn't. I don't know. It just seems like he's not in the team chemistry business. He's in the AJ McCarron business. But that's my personal opinion. But I actually was impressed with Arlington. I think to go into, I think they're calling it the Battle Dome, with 40,000 fans and putting up a fight. I mean, I think that it's a lot of self-inflicted wounds is why they lost. But I think this is a team with a lot of potential. And while they may have only played competently in your eyes, I think, because I do think that's a fair assessment, I do think that they are much better than competent as a team. I think we both agree, and we can harp on this a little bit more in a later game, but I don't like the inclusion of 2 quarterbacks. I mean, I wouldn't mind Lindsey Scott playing. I mean, you can't expect a guy to come off the bench and have complete accurate throws and be in rhythm. And I do like his legs, and I think that, that sounds weird. I do like the way he runs.
We know what you mean. In a sports podcast, it's okay.
But I think that, and I think running quarterbacks has a very good niche in this league. I think that, especially with the lack of running games that we're seeing. But yeah, I think Arlington had a lot of things that you can be very proud on. And I think their lack of a running game was made up for by having a guy in Tyler Vaughns who made catch after catch after catch. and he was really their go-to guy. And I think you see them mix in a couple other guys, Deontay Burnett, Isaiah Winstead, but really Tyler Vaughn is their guy. And Sal Cannella, that's their tight end. The guy, I mean, he's got a little bit of a swagger to him, and he made some big plays. And I think you saw their defense come alive. I think Vic Beasley got involved a little bit more than he did last week. I've always loved their inside linebacker duo. I like their cornerbacks too. And yeah, Taylor Russolino missed a kick, but I also think he made a kick or two as well, the kicker. So I think Taylor Russolino, he's not Jake Bates, but he's a good kicker for this league. And I think the most important shout out I can give to Arlington is Marquette King. I think the punters go really quiet in football, and they're very under the radar. And he kicked some booming punts. I didn't know he was a music artist as well. He apparently just released a new song. But Marquette King, one thing that they're going to have in their back pocket is when their offense does fail them, he's going to help them control field position. And those booming punts, and he gets them really high up there with some good hang time, so it allows their guys to go down and make the tackle. I mean, I think that's something that's going to go very under the radar, and it's going to keep them in a lot of games. And it made St. Louis have a much harder time getting the ball downfield because they were just starting farther back. So I like St. Louis a lot, but I think you have to give your flowers to Arlington. And I think they're going to be a team that's dangerous moving forward.
I'm not giving my flowers to Arlington. I agree with you on Scott. I mean, I think he should be in formations much more often. They should use him a lot like the Steelers used to use Cordell Stewart in the slash position. You can have him sometimes at quarterback, sometimes at the wildcat, maybe a two-back set, slot receiver, line him up a wide receiver. I mean, your offense is stagnant mostly. I mean, 24 doesn't sound bad, but they keep talking about Louis Perez, that he's has aspirations of the NFL. He's not 29. An NFL quarterback.
He's 29 years old.
Yeah, he's so even if he was 22, he's not an NFL quarterback this way. And so I would get a little bit more explosiveness and try and get that in there. But if you want to say, getting out of the Battle Dome on a very hungry, very motivated St. Louis team with only losing by 3 in the last couple seconds is a moral victory. Okay, there are moral victories in football. No one likes to think about it in the week, but sometimes those moral victories turn into real victories down the season. But I guess we'll see. We've
been saying St. Louis is the number 1 team in the league, and I think you might have been about to segue to the next game. So you already shouted out Marcel Aitman, so we don't need to do it further. But Hakeem Butler also had another good game this week, and Darius Shepard in the slot has been very high quality for them. So they have a trio of receivers. Not to mention their offensive line, I think personally is probably the best offensive line in the game. And then they were also able to get their edge rushers involved. I saw Travis Feeney a lot, Pita Taumupenu. I think I said that right, maybe not, but he got much more involved. He had a big sack. I think it was a strip sack, if I'm remembering correctly.
He's not part of the bloodline. No, my fingers don't go off for him. By the way, the 11 folks watching, thank you. Please hit like, and if you want to send us a comment, we're happy to put your comments on the air and address them. So that'd be very cool. Preferably 100%. Saying that your eyes were burned in the eclipse, but I look very handsome. That would be a welcome comment.
100%. Yeah. And just to finish my thought, I thought Willie Harvey Jr. had a great game at inside linebacker. My guy Ben DeLuca, he got a little big dogged in the end zone at one point, but he bounced back and made some big hits. I still think St. Louis, despite this being what I thought was a rough game for them, I still am high on them. So
well, with that crowd, you cannot, with that home field advantage, you cannot count them out. Half the games will be at home, and maybe winning half the games is enough. But we do have a comment. Let's see what it is and who it is. It is our good friend Charmaine. Hi, Charmaine. Thank you for always being there for all of the unpopular review lines and being there for us. We appreciate you. I'm sure you took part in WrestleMania festivities. If you were there, hope you had a great time. If you weren't there, hope you enjoyed all the shows. All right, so
and I have to say I enjoyed. I thought it was very comedic. The whole Logan Paul coming in on the Prime truck and the golf cart coming in, and then whatever his name is, I Show Speed. I saw all this on Twitter probably about 10 seconds after you saw it.
Somebody watches little wrestling. Yeah, that triple threat was that was a great match. That certainly was one of the highlights of it. I don't know, but all your positive talk about Arlington makes me feel a little bit like this. That is my podcast partner from Hammerlock Hangover, Big Daddy Cool, Steve Pena, and all of you from Unpopular Review are certainly familiar with him over the years, being a professional troll and one of the stalwarts here. All right, so next game is the Stallions versus the Panthers
What a
at
game.
Michigan, and Michigan 2 games in a row with very poor attendance, 7,475. Is Michigan deserving of a professional spring football team?
You know, I won't answer that question directly, but indirectly, Canton, Ohio, they did file some trademarks for some team names. So I do think that there is some competition and some potential going on there for something to change. I think that their attendance was dismal, and it's unfortunate to see. And I like the Michigan Panthers a lot, so it's hard to see them not having a fan base.
Yeah. The Michigan Panthers last week were, San Antonio was the surprise team of last week, but if there was a second surprise team, it would have been the Michigan Panthers. Not so much to you, more to me than to you. I think they might have showed us a little bit more as to who they are really this week, but it's, again, too early to tell. But I think they are sort of a team that I would describe as hit or miss. So anyway, both Stallions started off this game with early strong defense. So did the Panthers. Again, I keep saying this, all the teams seem to have strong defenses. This is the last time I think I'm going to say this, I promise. It might be because none of the teams have a very good offense. Special teams coverage was very good. The Panthers lost their center early. That might have played a factor in the game. I don't know if he came back or not into the game later on. I don't think so. Frankly, I didn't pay that much attention to it because I was just impressed that the Stallions had a running game, especially from CJ Maribel, who established a running game, not just was a serviceable running back, but established a running game and allowed them to have a two-headed monster in the running game, which I loved.
And did you say you were surprised? Because I thought we said CJ Maribel was probably the best running back coming out of week 1.
I'm surprised that any team established a running game. Like if you had 10 carries and 37 yards in week 1 as a running back, that was pretty good. Now we're starting to see a couple of teams that you may have, like, I don't know, we're going to have a lot of 100-yard rushers, without like the big runs like we saw with Durant, I believe. But, you could have someone that gets 13 or 14 carries and 60 or 70 yards and
a touchdown, a little bit of action in the passing game.
Yeah, and this is you had to pay attention to him. We
And
noticed
Ricky Person's the other guy. They make a really good 1-2 punch. Both of them are physical runners.
Oh yeah, definitely going to get to them. But sometimes with the running game, you stall a little bit, and the Stallions took an early 3-0 lead, and there were a lot of field goals. EJ Perry for the Panthers showed he could run a little bit. Didn't know that. These teams played very similarly, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But Michigan was definitely more hit or miss on offense. They were definitely more gaseous on offense. And the Stallions, while Birmingham continues not to impress me generally, they impress me in this league as being the most professional team on both sides of the ball. They seem to be the least flappable. They seem to have a game plan and they stick to it and they have confidence. I like what San Antonio is, sort of the wackiness and the fun and the explosiveness. But Birmingham feels like it's a real football team. I feel like I'm actually watching Division I college football, or maybe an NFL game when I'm watching them. And by the way,
and it reminds you a little bit of Skip Holtz's Oklahoma teams.
Notre Dame, you mean?
Notre Dame. That.
Yeah, Bob Stoops. You're thinking about Oklahoma. Yeah, indeed. I think actually even someone on commentary made the same comment. So very, very astute. At some point, Martinez came in as quarterback, and they really didn't miss a beat with Martinez in as quarterback. They're just a professional team. They have big runs, but they couldn't convert a lot of scores. They had 2 defensive turnovers in the first half. It was still 9-0. At this point, I wrote down, do they have Memphis syndrome? So, but after I wrote that down, Matt Corral came back into the game, and then Person came in, as you said, the explosive and rushing touchdown from the goal line. Nice to see. They went for 2. They converted. So, it went. They now had 17 points. I don't want to miss that in this time. The Panthers also got a touchdown. But Perry was benched for a drive, and then he came back again, and there was a tip ball. He's lucky it wasn't intercepted. But then he threw a long touchdown to Marquez Sims, the wide receiver, which was great. They went for 1, even though they were down at this point, I believe, 9-0. And I question why they went for 1 instead of going for 3 there to tie it up. And I wondered, will this haunt them? And it did. I mean, sort of. It was 9-7 at that point. They did get the 1 point. So I skipped ahead a little bit, and around the same time Corral came into, you had another big Bates. I don't want to forget about Bates. Bates for Michigan had another 60-plus yard field goal. I mean, and they're all straight down the center. They all have. It feels like he's got like 20 yards to go on. He could kick 80-yard field goals.
And this is a guy that didn't kick a single field goal in all of college.
It's amazing. It's like he's like a kicking savant. His leg is like it's like the Terminator or something. So this game was 17-10 at halftime. So no one's killing anyone. No one's out of the game. If they got those extra 2 points, it would have been 17-12. Not that big a deal. We have a bad snap for the Stallions at 3rd and goal. So they're stuck at another field goal. It goes to 20-10. Michigan goes down the field for another field goal. So it's now 20-13. Birmingham desperately needs an outside threat on wide receiver. They don't have anyone. There's no outside game. They're all an inside game.
I'll get to that once you're finished the game recap.
Okay, very good. All right, so in the 4th quarter, there's an interception thrown by Corral, but Michigan can't convert it. They have they punted on 4th down. Should this been the 4th and 12 try? Maybe. I don't know. Michigan also had a costly offensive penalty in the 4th quarter at 1 minute and 15 seconds, which was. It was an unnecessary offensive penalty at that. Person and Maribel still continued to be a good 2-headed monster, so they were able to control the clock. There were a bunch of defensive penalties in the last 2 minutes for both teams. Defensive lineman Davis for the Stallions is
Carlos stud.
And then Taco Charlton, one of we've talked about him, former sort of high draft pick by the Cowboys, had some problems, but Taco Charlton came in on what looked like a linebacker edge blitz, and huge. It was essentially a sack. It wasn't called a sack, but nothing on Michigan was ever the same. And Stallions end up winning the game, so good for them. I didn't jot down the final score, so of course I and I don't remember it, but Stallions I'll say. They never looked like the game was in doubt, but if they were playing a team that had the luck of San Antonio, they could have lost the game.
Yeah, and I actually think you mentioned every score. It was only 2013 after 17-10 at half.
Okay.
And as you mentioned earlier, I mean, if you're in a fantasy football league, I mean, either one of these kickers, you've got a guy in Bates who's kicking 60 and 50-yard field goals like they're nothing, and Chris Blewett made 4 field goals, I think it was. So both of these guys were active. I want to get in on Michigan first because they're the losers. We'll do the winners second. But poor Danny Etling comes in the game, and it doesn't go well. So E.J. Perry comes back in. Now, I want to liken E.J. Perry to Baker Mayfield.
Okay.
I think both of them are very similar, undersized quarterbacks with underrated legs. I think they bring the energy and the intensity that can help a team win, kind of the opposite of what I think with A.J. McCarron in this league. I think he kind of can bring the team chemistry up at the dismantle of his own body, and he's willing to put his body on the line. But E.J. Perry, I mean, at a certain point, his time might run out because as much as he can do good things, I think the PFF stat was he had 6 turnoverable plays in the first 2 weeks. I mean, he's throwing interceptions in both games. I mean, he's a little reckless with the ball. They need to move the ball, and Wes Hills is their running back. I haven't really seen much from him as a running back. As a receiver, I've actually seen him do some really good things, but they need to run the ball to take the pressure off EJ Perry, because this guy, he does not look like a starting UFL quarterback, which is a problem in the UFL. He needs to have it be a little simpler. He's a smaller guy. He's a guy that relies a little bit on his legs. He needs that help. And I think you see it. He's got some reliable guys. I mean, Trey Quinn, first of all, former Washington Commander player, number 18 in the slot, sure hands, really good route runner. He made a couple big catches for them. And really, I mean, Devin Gray made a couple plays. When you look at their team, they don't have the biggest names at the receiver or the tight end position or even the running back position. So I don't know if they can make an acquisition. I don't know if it just means that they need to plug someone else in the lineup, but they need to help EJ Perry, and they need to help him fast, because this is a team that their defense is going to keep them in every single game. I mean, they play good football. They just need an offensive boost, and in a league that favors offenses, we just haven't seen it yet for Michigan. And just to be nice, you know, Kainaku had another good game. Nate Brooks at cornerback, you know, Breland Speaks, whatever. They have a good defense, well-rounded, some guys that you might recognize their names. And I mean, Jake Bates. Mm-hmm. Jake Bates. There was a picture on Twitter somewhere with him and his 2 fangirls giving some autographs. And I mean, that's just cool for a kicker in a spring football league to be getting that kind of attention. And again, this is a kid that literally his last field goal is his senior year of high school. He played as a kickoff specialist and a soccer player in college. So now that he's doing this, I mean, there's a number of teams in the NFL that need a kicker. And I mean, he's not going to my team. There's no room for him with Justin Tucker, but there's a team somewhere that's going to find a home for him, and I think he's going to have a lot of success. But moving to Birmingham, I actually disagree with you. I think they have plenty of wide receiving talent, and I think their wide receivers are actually very good on the edge. Benjamin Victor and Marlon Williams are big guys. Gary Jennings and I'm going to cheat here. Gary Jennings and Amari Rodgers. I love Amari Rodgers, Clemson guy. Dad is a Ravens coach. Both of them are very good in the slot. You have Deion Kane as well, who's another very solid. He's like 6'2", and he runs like a 4.4, 4.5. They've got the guys. We like their 1-2 at running back. They've got Jay Sternberger. I mean, they have all the weapons that they need downfield, and my problem is the 2 quarterback thing. And maybe I'm old school for this, but you got Matt Corral, who's probably got the more natural arm talent. Got Adrian Martinez, who is the better runner. Mm-hmm. And as much as I love Matt Corral, and heading into the season, I was like, Matt Corral might be the sleeper for the best quarterback in this league. I think after watching both of them play, and Adrian Martinez got hurt week 1, so he only really got 1 series. And then they kind of split it pretty evenly down the middle this week. I think that they need to switch it up and go with Adrian Martinez. And they need to stick with one guy and just go with it. And I know their coach was saying, you know, we want to get as much film on tape for both of these guys so they can get to the next level, which is great. I mean, that's kind of one of the things you need to do to get the players in for this developmental league. But to win football games, you need a quarterback that's on rhythm, in the flow, and you see a lot of those penalties because the snap counts are different, and the way that they call plays in the huddle is different, and your team doesn't get better by both quarterbacks playing. And in this type of league, Adrian Martinez's legs, the way he runs the ball, and the way that these 2 guys are running the ball physical and better than everybody else, I think, in the league, I think that opens up a realm of possibilities that then will drop safeties into the box. And once you get that safety in the box and you get the read option threat and you have that successful running game established, it's going to be so easy to go over the top to all of these talented receivers that they have, because they've got 6 guys with NFL experience, high pedigree college careers, and that doesn't even mention their really strong defense. You mentioned Carlos Davis, and Taco Charlton, but that doesn't even mention Scooby Wright, who was all USFL last year, and you know he was a guy at Arizona who played very well, and he had 100-some tackles last year, and I think he's on pace to do another 100-some this year. And Kenny Robinson, I love that guy out of West Virginia. I mean, they've got a lot of dudes on defense to carry the way, so they need to figure out their offense. And I think that they're going to keep doing this 2 quarterback thing, which I just despise, because if they picked one guy, they could win the whole thing.
I think so. I mean, and I know coaches get excited with the two quarterbacks because you think you're gonna confuse the defenses on.
Yeah.
But I think what we've been seeing is they're more likely confusing their own offenses, and there were a lot of offensive penalties and a lot of silly ones at that. And maybe it's because they're confused and there's different quarterback counts and different cadences and hard counts when they don't need a hard count or not using a hard count when they do need one. I mean, Sternberger, who had a great first half week one. He's sort of disappeared a little bit. I mean,
A little bit.
you'd think if you have that running game, the two-headed running game, and Sternberger, you could really work the middle, and then those outside guys are gonna find some space because the safeties are gonna move. And let's face it, these defenses, the defenses have been solid, but we've seen where the defenses get caught and tricked where NFL defenses don't, especially the DBs, like where they'll run up because they think they know where the ball is, but they're wrong. And we've seen that a lot. So, you think you could take advantage of it, but they just didn't, but maybe they will. But I agree with you. And I didn't notice any shortfall. I like Corral. But
I do like Corral.
But I like the team better with Martinez. I agree with you. And I'm thinking like if I don't know who's the rival with who, and there's 8 teams, so they're all rivals. But if I'm Birmingham, I might trade Corral to Michigan for whatever you think you need from on Birmingham from them, whatever they've got. And if you do have 4 good receivers, but you're not getting the ball to any of them, maybe you need to unload one of those receivers also and get yourself. I don't know if Michigan seems to have a pretty good defense. Maybe their DBs are better than yours. Maybe you get a safety in a corner for offensive players, and you become more solid because they remind me of Ohio State back in the day, where before they had explosive offenses, when they were sort of like the 2000 Ravens, or sort of like the 80s New York Giants, where the offenses were just good enough to win, but the defenses really carried, and that's sort of what Birmingham reminds me of. But
go get Kai Nakua and you load up that defense, and you got 2 great safeties back there. I mean, and then you have your guy at quarterback. I don't know. I like that call a lot.
There you go. All right. Well, GMs, if you're listening. So the next game, you know what the next game was? I will tell you. It is the kick in the face game. Yeah, you want to see that again? It was
that almost looked real.
It was real. What are you talking about? So, all right. This was Houston versus DC. And, credit to me, probably both of us, but definitely me, because I remember I said it because I listened to me a lot. And I said that Houston and DC last week reminded me a lot of each other, even though that's not what I expected going in. But I think the loss of the running back for DC really, really changed their entire team's complexion, and given a week to see if they would change things up. Nope, it did not. So this game, I felt like I was watching Superman battle Bizarro, but neither one of them had arms. So they couldn't punch. There was no offense. They were just like bouncing into each other. So first of all, kudos to DC for having 15,052 people there. Good job. It is starting to entice me that maybe I should go to a game. But then if I go to a game, it makes it difficult to cover it for the show. But then again, there was this.
And buy a shirt.
Yeah, I'd have to buy a shirt. But there's this magical thing called DVRs, which I can in fact use. So I was watching both offenses, and the thing, I'm not going to play it again, of Steve falling asleep, the guy with the fedora. That's sort of how I felt. I was also watching Houston's coaching decisions because I was very critical of some of their coaching decisions last week. So in this game, there was an early punt block, which was pretty exciting.
That's fun.
But then DC threw an interception right after that for Houston TD. So Houston's offense came from the defense, and he took it all the way, and you could hear him saying, "No one's going to catch him. No one's going to catch him. No one's going to catch him," and nobody caught him. They missed their extra point, so it became 6-0. Well, actually, there was a Houston touchdown or DC touchdown at some point, and it was 6-6. Both teams missing their extra points. I forgot the details of the DC score, which is unfortunate. But it wasn't the pump block because it was mostly a defensive game. Do you remember what the first score for DC was?
I actually thought it was Houston that scored first because I remember I was watching that game back and I was like, Jared Garantamo looks a lot more comfortable and better. I'd be lying if I said I remember. All that's sticking out to me is that deep pass that they threw to Kiki Chisholm at the end.
Yeah, it's true. Obviously I took more notes on Houston than I did on DC, which is sort of a shame. And what I try to do, but I fail, is because I can't write. My handwriting is awful, and I can't write it, so I write big.
I know
so
where
my
I
goal
get that
is,
from.
Yeah, right. So I have Houston versus DC. So my goals are to write DC notes in the DC column and Houston notes on the DC column. But it doesn't work. And so then I start drawing lines. It becomes one of those like conspiracy boards, where all the pictures are going there.
And those always make sense.
I will get better because, there's only so many weeks I can convince myself that system works, and 2 is the limit. So what I'd say is Guarantano and Tamu are both overrated, and they're both extremely similar. They might be young and talented, but like they're the same quarterback. They're both erratic. They have like 50% completion rates. They both have okay legs. Neither one is particularly accurate. And then Garantano got hurt. He couldn't even make it to the locker room. Turns out he broke his rib, and he's going to be out at least a month. And I'm sorry for him. I'm sorry for the kid. He probably would get better with play. But I actually think this team, and I said it preseason, again, I didn't really know what the hell I was talking about. I was going mostly from your pedigree and your school and your size and sort of, but I always said that Stinnett reminded me of more of a prototypical quarterback, sort of 6'4", 6'5", 220, 225 guy. And so he came into the game, and at the half, it was 9-12 Houston. Obviously 3 field goals for Houston. There was DC, while it sounds like field goals, it was 2 touchdowns, and there was a long touchdown to Price by Tamu. There was a coach's challenge, but he was talked out of it. The refs, I thought, were very fair. They said, listen, this was already reviewed by, I think Blandino was reviewing this game. Pierre Pereira was on Saturday, and he said, they've already reviewed and upheld it. So do you want to withdraw your challenge? He said, yes. So,
Which I've never seen anything like that before.
I never have either, and I wasn't
Once
sure.
Once you throw that flag, it should be official. I don't know. I don't like that, actually.
I sort of agree with you, but it seems sort of, I guess, and I think this goes back to the offensive call that the forward progress that you questioned earlier. I think they're sort of saying, when in doubt, rule on offense because we're not scoring points.
But you want excitement.
Yeah. So that was interesting, but they missed the extra point. So so Houston scores another field goal. It's 12-12 at the half, which, I mean, for these teams, 12 doesn't seem so bad, but it was just ugly. But Stinnett, his first drives him for a field goal. Terrific. So then all of a sudden, it's like Stinnett sort of remembered how to play in the second half because he was very erratic when he first came in, and he threw to wide receiver Chisholm, a really nice touchdown play, nice catch by Chisholm. Kiki Chisholm. Right, a lot of Kikis in this league. There's Kiki, there's QT, there's a whole lot of fun names.
Kiki Cutie is one person.
Well, Kiki Cutie, and so who's Chisholm?
That's Kiki Chisholm.
Okay, well, there is more than one Kiki. So, there you go. Kiki and Kiki. The only Kiki I knew prior to this was Kiki D from "Don't Go Breaking My Heart" fame with Elton John. Yeah, and I think she also did.
That's before my time.
I got the music. Yeah, I got the music in me. I think it's also Kiki D.
At least I know the songs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, they're very good songs. So again, another missed extra point, 18-12 at this point. We had a sack and a fumble, and then a bunch of fumbles. And instead of DC losing the ball to Houston, DC somehow managed to keep possession of it. Good for them, but they really shouldn't have. I mean, it was. I mean, of course they should have, but they didn't deserve it. I mean, it was fun, but it was ugly. Like, everyone is insistent on trying to pick up the ball and run. Just fall on the goddamn ball.
Got to be smart sometimes.
Sometimes. All right. So DC had a huge turnover on a giant Houston play, but they converted this into, guess what? A field goal. So it's 18-15 at this point. We get Houston has a Ty Scott touchdown. Great pass. This was the one truly beautiful offensive play of the game. If you only saw this, and this is all you saw of Ta'amu and the Washington offense, you would have thought they were great. He was back there in the corner. Ta'amu floated the ball perfectly. It wasn't like flopping around like a bird. It was just perfect placement. His guy dropped right into his arms, a thing of beauty.
And that's what he does. That's what he does. He throws a nice ball. He reminds me of Jordan from the show All American. He's just tall and can launch the ball. He's not always perfect, but he can launch the ball.
See, well, I don't know what Jordan from All American is in
Netflix TV show.
Ah, well, this thing makes me want to put this on, see what this says.
And there's the people that think that they're owed an apology.
Yep, that is.
Shout out CM Punk.
Yeah. Oh, you know CM Punk. All right, well, those are the fans.
I've worked with CM Punk multiple times. He does commentary for the CFFC. So,
you know, it's bizarre because he mentioned CFFC, and I'm like, it can't possibly be the same one that Jake. So, you know, CM Punk, you didn't think to, hook up the old man?
You know, CM Punk, he's always on the move. He's a very popular guy. So he probably recognizes me, but I'm not sure he knows my name.
He likes wrestling. He likes comics. He likes horror movies. It's like we're obviously destined to be best friends.
And I heard he did great on the broadcast at WrestleMania.
He was. And by the way I booked his contribution to WrestleMania, despite him having a torn tricep, was exactly how it happened. And if those of you don't believe me, listen to Hammerlock Hangover from last week WrestleMania predictions, and then go back and watch it. And it was exactly, as a matter of fact, I went 12-2 on my WrestleMania predictions. And listen, if you told me that Bubba Ray Dudley was going to be the guest referee in the Philly Street Fight, I would have gotten that one right. And the one I got wrong, you could hear my voice. I knew I got it wrong. It was I called it my Dark Horse special, which I shouldn't do on prediction shows. But I mean, it's not like anybody's placing bets based on what I say. All right.
Which apparently you can do that on WWE, but whatever.
You can bet on anything these days.
Don't know how.
So this game ended with DC winning with that score of 18-23. So say the offenses are struggling, you hear 18-23 in the UFL, that's not terrible. I mean, most of those over-unders were about 40.5, something like that. So I guess it's about what people are expecting. But, again, a lot of field goals, a lot of missed extra points. What say you about this game in particular?
I'll flip around. I'll talk about the winner this time first. DC. Okay. Ta'amu let down a little bit. I don't want to call him overrated because I do think he has the pedigree, he has the size, he has the potential, he has the athleticism, he has the arm strength. And maybe it's the lack of the running game, which is a common theme with a lot of these teams. But I don't know. Ta'amu was a letdown this week. He struggled until the very end, and he made up for it with that bomb to Ty Scott. But Cameron Harris and I'm forgetting the other guy's name, that running back, but those guys they didn't give him much help. And Kiki Cutie, he had a great week one, and he was very silent. He had a big drop over the middle of the field, which is very unlike him. He's very sure-handed, so that drop was a little surprising for me. I will say Kelvin Harmon got a little bit more involved, which I like. That's an NC State guy, a nice physical receiver that I'm a big fan of. And Alex Ellis, their backup tight end, he was looking like a really good target for them. I think that they need to work him into their offense a little bit more. But I think when you look at them, I think this is a team that their offensive line needs to step up. Ta'amu is getting pressured, and that doesn't help their running game either. And their defense didn't play as aggressive and physical as they did in week one, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. I think they got a little bit lucky because they had a little bit of an easier matchup. And moving to Houston, I mean, we mentioned Garantamo. He kind of looked more comfortable before the injury, and he wasn't expected to get the starting position. I think a lot of people expected Reed Sinnett to be the starter, and he got the starting position, and week one was rough. And week two, he started to look good. And I think you said Reed Sinnett. I don't know. at first I was watching, I was like, oh, he's accurate. And I was like, oh, he's kind of moving the ball for them a little bit. And then I was like, all he's doing is dumping it off. And it frustrated me. It just seemed like the same thing over and over and over again. And I don't know if that's a lack of practice reps. I actually do think he looked solid, but I want to see them open up the playbook for him. And I do like TJ Pledger, not just because of his name. I think him at running back, he's a guy that, I mean, there's not much competition for the third best team with the running game. So he could very easily get them there. And Justin Hall stepped up for them on the outside. And we mentioned Kiki Chisholm. He made a big play. And Emmanuel Butler, he also had a couple really nice catches for them. But their offense is just lackluster and boring to me. It's very boring and basic. It's like the offense that I ran in high school. I mean, everybody runs slants, everybody runs hitches. I mean, we would very rarely mix up the offense because you don't know what you're going to get. When I was in at quarterback, you definitely did not know what you were going to get. I mean, I didn't either. I didn't know where I was throwing the ball. I couldn't see over the offensive line half the time. But their defense is where their bread and butter is going to be earned. And like we said, I mean, their defense is going to keep them in the game. I mean, they're going to be a rough team to play against, but I almost put them in the same category as Memphis, as they respectfully kind of suck. And you know what? Before you go, I just want to be positive because I was so negative, and I hate that I was negative. I mean, Chris made his return, and he played great. Reuben Foster came back from injury, and I mean, he just doesn't belong in this league. He should find a home in the NFL soon, and I think that they had some really good play on their defense, but we'll shout out Cornelder, the guy who made that interception at the beginning of the game. And he had a punt return where he had a sick spin, and he's just really fast and athletic and a good player to have. But I don't know, man. There's something about this Houston team that, I don't know, maybe the switch just needs to be flipped, but I don't love them.
I came out of this game feeling that Houston and DC were still the same team. And it's not even like, how we played a little bit before with Birmingham and Michigan, and how you could sort of make a better team or teams from a trade. I'm not sure if you switched. I'm not sure there's any parts from DC that would make Houston better, any parts from Houston that would make DC better. I mean, I feel like they're like, again, I felt like it's like that gif of Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man, and and they're saying exactly. So what's hot in the league? Defense. The defenses are hot. What's getting hotter? The special teams are pretty good on these teams. What's cold? Extra point scoring. And this options rule is not working out as designed. We're getting a lot of missed extra points, period. And there was one time where a coach, when they clearly just should have gone for one because it was a one-score game no matter what, instead they went for two. They got it, so it didn't cost them any. And the only thing I could think of is, I mean, if you're going to go for two, go for three, so that's a 6-point game, so that so the other team has to score a touchdown. That would make sense. It's like he was scoring, like, in case like the other team went up, scored 8 points, and then you went back for a field goal for a tie. But he was coaching for 2 scores, which in this league is bizarre. The teams can barely move forward, let alone coach for 2 scores. So just and commentary said the same thing. They're like, I'm really wondering why I just didn't go for one there and take your 4 points. It's the same thing. It's a field goal game. Either they have to if they get a field goal, they're still behind. If they get a touchdown, you're still ahead. And then we're trying to we're both trying to do the math. If they go 7, it's a 3-point game. If they go, and if they're ahead by 8 or 9, you still have to score a touchdown either way. The math worked the same. It was like the 5 made no sense. 4 made easy sense, the safe sense, and 3 made aggressive sense. But 5 going for 2 to get 5 ahead made no sense. And I'm glad that, because sometimes math concepts elude me, but I like to think I can do simple, and it was nice to hear commentary say the same thing. So,
and you know what? I agree. I think this is going to be a very consistent theme. And I think the coaches are still figuring it out, because I think they're considering in their head, well, what if this team scores a touchdown and goes for 2 or for 3 or whatever it is? I think they're still trying to figure out the strategy behind it all.
Well, I think at this point, I'm very happy to say that this week on my predictions, after seeing the teams play once, I think I have these teams pretty well figured out. There's definitely room for
Yeah.
surprises, especially. And listen, the Brahmas surprised me pleasantly, but I went 4-0, so I'm feeling pretty proud of myself after a 1-3 week one.
And you know what? I'll agree with you. I went 3-1. We were together on 3, and I decided to take the other side on one game. But whatever. We got to be different a little bit. While we're talking about standings and results, I think it's funny to mention that the XFL conference and the USFL conference have the exact same record breakdown. In the XFL, you have the Brahmas on top at 2-0, with the DC Defenders and the Battlehawks tied for second at 1-1, with the Renegades bringing up the rear at 0-2. I think this division is way better than the other one, but I digress. The USFL, the Birmingham Stallions, are on top at 2-0, while the Panthers and the Showboats both are in second with 1-1 records, and the Roughnecks are at 0-2 at the bottom of the course. But with that being said, I mean, for whoever's watching, because I have not been gifted the power to see this yet, thank you for watching, and let's bring you to our predictions, the most fun part of the show.
Yeah. So what do we got this week?
So our first game of the week is going to be in Arlington, Texas on ESPN at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It will be DC against Arlington. And I'll let you go first because I'm very curious what you're going to say here.
Oh, wow. Arlington desperately needs a win, but so does DC. And as people will remember, I thought DC was going to be like in the championship game. I'm going to go with DC. They're not showing me a whole lot of anything, but frankly, neither is Arlington. I think DC's defense is that good, and at some point they have to have some form of an offense. You'd think maybe.
Maybe.
I'm gonna go with and home field advantage really hasn't been, league wide hasn't really been much of a thing. I think actually week one like all of the road teams won, so I'm not 100%, but I think this week was 2-2. So I'm gonna go with DC, which is probably an upset, but again, I have not been impressed by Arlington, and I think that quarterback thing is going to haunt them until they have to make a very uncomfortable choice.
And you know what? I'm happy you picked DC, and I'm happy you mentioned the upset. I actually think if you were to line this game, I think the game would open pretty close, and I actually think the odds makers might give it to DC purely based off the records and the results. I'm going to go the other side. I like Arlington here. I was impressed with how they played against the Battlehawks. I'm forgetting who they played in week one, but I believe it was the Brahmas. But they played two really tough matchups, and I don't think their 0-2 record shows who they are as a team. And I'm going to go with Arlington. I mean, you've got the former champion Luis Perez leading the ship, and I liked how Tyler Vaughn's played, and their defense is good. So I'm going to take Arlington, and I actually think Arlington's going to make a little bit of a statement here. I think they might win by, I mean, these are weird scores, but like 9 points, 8 points. Like I think it'll be a full possession that they win by. So I think it'll be a good game, and I actually think that game might be the game of the week to watch because I think there's so much intrigue behind what's going to happen with both of these teams.
Okay. Very good. All right. So we have listen, I don't feel strong about this pick, but I do think DC's defense is smothering. So, all right. What else do we got?
And so I don't like this. The same thing as last week. They're going from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. And I wish it was at 4 p.m. to help me get to UFC 300 this weekend. Biggest card probably I've ever seen. I mean, main cards, but the prelims and the early prelims are unbelievable. And I don't want to have to watch both things at once. I would rather have the game at 4 o'clock and end right in time for it. But at 7 p.m. in Birmingham, Alabama on Fox, we have Memphis playing Birmingham. So you went first last time, and I'm just going to keep it short. I don't think Memphis is good. I think Memphis having some injuries really hurts them, and I'm going with Birmingham all the way.
Yeah, I'm changing this from an H to an L. The slow boats are losing. Birmingham's going to go 3-0.
And I hate being negative, but they just are not impressing me. So
listen, two teams play.
I would love to be wrong.
Lose.
Yeah,
one team has to lose. It's not you being negative. It's just reality.
And with that being said, we move to Sunday at noon p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I believe this is Michigan's third straight home game at Ford Field on ABC. And I said noon, right? That's weird that they're going from 1 p.m. to noon. Houston against Michigan.
Whew. I'm going to go with Michigan at home. Houston, I mean, like DC, hasn't shown me enough, but Michigan, while they're sort of hit or miss, they have a solid defense, which match Houston does too, but they do have some offense sometimes, and Houston doesn't. So I'm going to go with Michigan at home, and hopefully Michigan fans, you will do better about filling up that stadium. I mean, I'm not expecting you to have 25,000, but you should get to 10, 12,000. There's really no reason for you not to, show out and show up. Your team is scrappy. They're at least interesting. And some of these teams are, unless you love defense, a lot of these teams are not interesting. So I'm going to go for Michigan, and I'm going to be positive about the Great Lakes and Midwest generally. And those people are going to go out and show up for the game because most distractions are over with.
Yeah, and I think the national championship begins here in about 30 minutes, so there's going to be a lot less of that. South Carolina just won against Iowa in women's March Madness, so there's a lot of less stuff going on. And Sunday morning, there's not much else going on in the world, so I would love to see this game get a little bit more recognition, because I think this is going to be a defensive powerhouse game. And I've said multiple times I'm a big fan of defense. I grew up on the Baltimore Ravens, so obviously I've got to be a fan of defense.
Of course.
And while you were talking, I was like, I kind of want to pick Houston just because I don't know what to expect from Reed Sinnett on a full week's of practice, knowing he's going to be the starter. But with that said, I think I have to stick with my guns. I've been high on Michigan since day one. I really don't think Houston's all that great, but I do think they have an insane defense. But I think Michigan's offense is going to be just a little bit better than Houston's. I think Michigan's defense is going to be just as good in this matchup. I think it might be a really low-scoring game, like 13-10, or that's a little too traditional of a score. So maybe we'll go with like 15-11. But I do think Michigan will edge this out, and it could very easily be on a walk-off field goal. But this is going to be a defensive game, and I think it'll be an interesting way to start Sunday morning. But with that said, we head over to ABC at 3 p.m. in San Antonio, Texas. We've got the Battlehawks versus the Brahmas in what is definitely the game of the week. I said DC Arlington's a good game, but this is the game of the week. Take it away.
I'm all in on the Brahmas. They didn't really show a lot last week. I think they're going to learn from that. I think they're more exciting. I know you like St. Louis, but I find St. Louis to be a lot like a bunch of these teams. I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between like St. Louis, Arlington, and frankly, even Memphis. I think that Memphis is sort of on the low end of those, but I think that they're all sort of mid. Birmingham is the most superior mid team. So the Brahmas are the most interesting team in the league, and they've managed, and they escaped with a win. They didn't quit on themselves, so they have that explosiveness. And if they just get back to whatever they did week one, and and continue this, I don't know. I feel like they might have a little bit of magic. So I'm all in on the Brahmas, and of course that's because, and even though the Bloodline lost this week, I'm still
just bring it, bitch.
Yep. So. Always a Rock guy. And, so the Brahmas.
Yeah, and, that is the Rock's team. I would think that's the People's team. Again, they were helped a little bit by the refs last week, but, I do think them being at home helps. I'm really internally debating this one a lot. I don't know if my facial reactions are showing that or not, but my head is spinning.
It's like The Exorcist here. It's like you're going round and round.
If I can make my prediction that this is going to be the highest scoring game we've seen yet this season, I would like that. I think that right now we'll see
men on UFL. You are a co-host. You can do whatever you want.
Well, we've been picking winners, so if you're a gambler, bet the over. These overs have been set in the 40s, and I think that one team's going to score 30 for sure. I think both of these teams are going to be up in the upper 20s, 30s. I could even see this being a really high-scoring game, but I think it's going to be fun. I think this is a game made for prime time. I don't like that it's at 3 p.m. I would love to schedule these games. I'm sure there's other TV restrictions in front of it, but with that tangent said, I really haven't helped myself lean one way or the other. You're right. There's not much home field advantage. And with that said, as much as I've been disliking and hating on AJ McCarron, and as much as I've been probably one of the louder Brahmas fans on this media UFL tangent that there is, because there's not that many people, and I haven't heard many people that high on the Brahmas until week one happened. I'm going to go against the Brahmas, I think. There's something in my gut. Maybe it's just because I'm looking at myself right now wearing a St. Louis Battlehawks shirt, but I think St. Louis edges this out. I think they're just the more well-rounded team. I think we saw some kinks in the armor of the Brahmas. And with that said, I think St. Louis is going to score a lot of points. I think the Brahmas are also going to score a lot of points. And I think it's going to be a really fun game, but let me get St. Louis to edge it out.
Okay. So we disagreed on 2 games. So, all right. So that'll make for an interesting competition this week, or it should anyway, between us. I think that's it. And once again, we have failed to go under an hour. So maybe we should just say 90 minutes is what we're going to do. So Jake,
my stomach hates me.
Yeah. If you want to be followed or found, where should they follow or find you?
Hey, find me on Twitter at Jake_Lippman. Really haven't done too much work at all with my podcast, as I said, for probably like 4 weeks in a row now. Who knows if I'll bring it back or not. But if you want to check out some awesome MMA interviews, Behind the Cage Door is where that page is. Right now, there's a Lippman curse going on. I think only one of the guys I've interviewed has won since I've interviewed them. So that's
CM Punk also, apparently. So
I haven't gotten to interview him, unfortunately.
Of course you have.
Yeah. He's on the page, so go check it out. But go follow me on Twitter. I'll be bantering it up about UFC 300 all weekend long and probably all week as well. So hit me up there. But thank you for watching. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. I'm excited for this week of the UFL, and that's all I've got.
Listen, I am in way too many places. So the easiest thing to do is just follow me on X at IcarusFellMD. If you don't mind me being a giant troll on wrestling, it's Evil Dose at Garden of Doom. You can, and of course, you are, if you're listening to this on download, you are listening to Garden of Doom as well, and probably Garden Views. But I tell you, 2 of the most popular shows of Garden of Doom were in the last 3 weeks, and that was Gary Wayne on on his stuff on like I said, the doomiest doomsday show of all, should have been my opus, and then Robert Beto, who comes back periodically on the Olmecs. A lot of people are interested in the Olmecs. And then this past week, an author who wrote the Anubis Chronicles. I can tell you, I've had 2 really interesting interviews that are in the tank. One, a British actor who's been in lots of stuff, and he's pretty cool. Actually, besides CM Punk, he might be my new best friend. And I spoke to yesterday a gentleman who had a indoor and outdoor poltergeist experiences over a several-month period of span in a sleepy little town on the south of Sussex, near Hampshire, in merry old England. So that's all fun, and I've got some people coming up on Garden Views. I have a horror author who won the Stoker Award once and was nominated a second time. I'm going to release that Garden Views probably this week. It was originally being a Garden of Doom, but it became more of the author's tale than the spooky stuff. And I'm interviewing a homicide detective, or former homicide detective, show on Wednesday. So got some fun stuff there. PJ Blunt is coming on again next month. We're going to talk about more about war in space and space security and things like that. He's a
interesting.
They call him a jurist. He's a what we would call a law professor at Cardiff University in Wales, though he is American. And then I also actually a former Playboy centerfold, author, podcaster, actress, you name it, everything is coming on the show. And I don't know, just cooking with gas lately.
Lots of stuff coming up. And I'm excited. John White, Professor John White from Craigenford, my favorite YouTube channel. He's coming on again. Mark Booth, who wrote the Secret Wisdom, is going to come on and talk about Rosicrucians and Templars and Masons and Hermeticism and Gnostics. You name it, it's there. So we got it. Tomorrow night, I'm on Toonie Wrestling, on Tooneytown Wrestling on YouTube with Marvin the Movie Monster and a bunch of your favorite IWC Twitter accounts. That's Internet Wrestling Community. Paranormal guys, they contacted me today and say, you're basically a co-host now. You want to come on Wednesday? I'm like, all right. So, and they're blowing up all over the place. They're on radio stations in New Mexico, Denver, San Francisco, Nashville, Atlanta, just outside of Washington, D.C. in Fairfax County. And they're on a TV station and the podcast and YouTube, and they're growing. And I don't know, but by the way, nothing pays me. None of my jobs pay me. So
I have a lot. I have a lot of. Well, my main job pays me, which is fine. But anyway,
It's always nice to have a day job.
it is always nice to have a day job, and having 7 night jobs can be a bit of a grind. But so anyway, thanks to everyone who's listening. Thanks to Wrestling Soup for hosting this show, though sort of on the down low because you're on the Garden of Doom feed. I also do legal shorts. I call it the Black Letter Body Slam, where law and wrestling intersect, which happens a lot. 2 of them have published, and there's 2 that are waiting to be downloaded by Mission. I'm probably going to do. I have to look into the World Wildlife Fund versus World Wrestling Federation case to see if I'm right about something. If I am, then a show will happen. If I'm wrong, nah. Anyway, 5 minutes of plugs is too many. Like I said, I'm doing way too many things. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Jake. Thanks for everyone's patience. We keep saying we're going to try to get shorter. You know what? I'm done lying to you. This is going to be a 90-minute show, I think.
Let's just try and get it under 90 minutes instead of
Under
5
90
minutes
minutes.
over.
And with that, I will shut up. See you next week.